No evil stands a chance to win when love is.
Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with speaker, singer, and coach Janey Brown. She is a trauma-informed coach, professional singer, and keynote speaker that helps people build resilience to fear and manage mental health so they can radiate confidence in front of any audience. These days, she is studying psychology at Queen's University and will be publishing her first book in 2023. She ultimately loves deep connections and having great conversations that uplift, inspire, and help others. Over the last 2 decades, she has performed in front of thousands of people and struggled with astonishing stage fright most of the way. After avidly studying psychology and trauma since 2014, what was once her fear has now become her fuel. Enjoy this story.
Well, nice to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure. I love having good conversations. So.
Oh yeah. That's the beauty, the modern therapeutic version of podcasting. It's a wonderful thing.
Totally.
Before we get into your life as an esteemed speaker, singer, and coach, I want to begin with kind of the global elephant in the room, which has been COVID. And I'm curious how you survived the last 2+ years of everything we've gone through and how it subsequently has changed the way that not only you live your life, but the way that you approach your business.
You know, it's kind of interesting. I'm going to be real with you. This is sort of a selfish thing to say, but when COVID hit, I felt actually really, I guess the word is seen. Like, as an artist and as an entrepreneur and someone who's walked this path kind of all my life, like there's been, a job here and there that has obviously sustained me, part-time serving or consultant work or whatever. But like, for the most part, I've lived in the dark, you know what I'm saying? In terms of like, where am I going next and check to check as do most artists. And when COVID hit and everyone was now having job insecurity and no one really knew what was going to happen and everyone was living check to check, like on that front, I felt less alone. Like I kind of felt like, oh, the rest of the world now gets it and we're all in this together. And it felt very unifying for me. Obviously, tragedy aside, that's, another story altogether. But when people say, like, how did COVID impact you? I mean, to be honest, there was this aspect of it that made me feel a lot less alone because I wasn't in this struggle that I've known for so long alone anymore. There is this other aspect where, live performances weren't available and, the momentum that I had built, which obviously takes a while for a lot of artists and entrepreneurs, that momentum, it did, kind of come to a sudden halt and live shows were no more and live, workshops and keynote speaking, all of that was, pretty much my biggest cash cow and it was just off the table. So that was intense and, any pressure that I had been used to living kind of amplified on that front. But it really helped me, focus on the holes and the weaknesses within my business and within my, artist journey. And it allowed me to strengthen it. It allowed me to kind of like develop a 2.0 or 3.0 even version of it. So I'm definitely grateful for that. But yeah, of course, there was struggle as well.
I think the key to COVID, from my perspective, and talking to a lot of people, and I really did hone in a lot on the musician world because I had to make a choice when this happened, and I really, really amped up what I was doing. I was playing, I was doing interviews with musicians all over the world, and I have a couple teenagers at home, and I was listening, and the resounding timbre in everybody's voices was positive. But I think the thing about COVID, going through this pandemic, is if you were a positive person that tended to see the glass half full, you were going to magnify that and lay that out in different ways during a pandemic. If you were a negative person that found ways to find fault in everything, it was only going to splinter and fracture more during this time. So I think that's a big part of it. But I like the way you explained that not feeling alone. That's a very interesting take I don't think I've heard yet.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird. I know other artists that feel that way. I'm part of different artist communities, and I know that they feel that way, but they're really shy to say it because it does kind of sound selfish. I don't think it should sound selfish. It's like, it's part of our reality. Like, the world doesn't see what it's like to be living in this place of the unknown. Like, to kind of step outside the social constructs and say, like, I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to just, essentially have to follow my heart here and rely on the guidance of the universe and take one more step and one more step. Like, we can see a little bit in front of us, but, for a lot of people, it's sort of like, I can see just in front of me, and that's the step I'm going to take. But beyond that, like, it's kind of the unknown. So I don't think it should be like a shameful thing to admit. It's just the reality of most artists, and it just so happens that the rest of the world doesn't actually see it and, therefore aren't able to appreciate it.
I think one of the byproducts of living through this is that we felt the need to have each other in community. So I find your answer actually quite logical. I don't find it as anything that is strange at all. I mean, I think that's actually what we all did want, was that level of community, and you obviously exemplified that with your answer. So I'm curious, I'm looking on paper at what you're doing. I'm wrapping my head around what you do. But this tends to be the equalizer here. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. And one of the kids is going to look up at you, and they're going to be like, what do you do for a living? How will you answer that child?
I would say, I help you become stronger at facing your fear. So I help you, that monster that as fear and that makes you feel afraid, I help you actually become stronger than it, so that it doesn't make you feel as afraid anymore, and that it, and so that it helps you build your courage and your strength.
So by proxy, that would mean there's a level of you that's fearless, and I'm curious, and obviously driven, as an artist. I mean, it requires a great amount of drive, and helping people too. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. So I'm curious, take me back to your childhood, where you were born and raised, and how these seeds became who you are today. How did these motivators and this vision for your life become the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, great question. There's probably a lot to unpack there. I'll try to keep it concise, but I was born and raised in a small town called Brockville. It's in this region of land called the Thousand Islands in Ontario, Canada. And, that was kind of the first exposure to my world, was kind of like this small town kind of living and, lots of nature and things like that. But I got into performing quite young. I was a child performer starting at about 9 or 10 years old. And when I started my performance journey as a kid, I really was fearless. You used the word fearless, and I laughed because I don't believe in becoming fearless. I only believe in stronger capacity for fear, which will always, always, always knock at our door as human beings. But having said that, when I was a child and I first got on stage, I was fearless. Like, I literally had no fear. It was just this thing that I loved and did. And, I came alive and grew my wings on the stage. And then as I got older and I got into puberty and high school and bad skin and body image issues and stuff, that's when I started to really become self-conscious, and stage fright started. And stage fright, was a part of my experience kind of unbeknownst to me, for over a decade, maybe 15 years through my performance career. So I've been on stage for about 26 years, and, over half of that has been a lot of angst and fear and struggling around the career itself and the performing itself. So I guess where the seed got planted is when we were to have fear, in our performance, experience, oftentimes the production team or the directors or whatever would be like, if you have fear, this sort of life isn't for you. You're kind of in the wrong industry. Instead of saying, oh, it's normal to have fear about something that you really care about, and here's how to cope with that. Here's how to deal with that. It was like, you don't belong here if you have fear, and you're sort of, it's a weakness if you have fear, versus let's build strength around that weakness. Let's face that fear and have you become more resilient and again, grow a larger capacity to that fear so that you can become more badass and get out there and keep doing your job. So the fear, let's say the seed to want to help people face their darkness and face their shadow side was, I guess it grew stemming from a place of like the lack of support and proper leadership, in my experience as a child and as a teenager, and sort of what that did to me long term without treatment, like the constant override of fear and the constant, pretending that it's not there. It grew into a monster that consumed my physical and mental health. So, going through that has been the TSN turning point, or like, I'm trying to think of like an American reference, but a turning point essentially in, wanting to kind of like help people not go through the same hell as I did.
So before we depart, this realm of questioning, let's go back to the third grade. What was your dream growing up? What did you want to be?
I wanted to be a superstar, for sure. Like, ever since I can remember, I wanted to be on stage performing in front of thousands. That was my everything, for sure.
So, are you happy with how everything turned out?
That's a funny question. I mean, if I'm to compare my reality to that ideology, then that's a recipe for suffering. The reality is I have performed in front of thousands of people. The reality is that I did get signed eventually as an artist. The reality is I have worked with Grammy Award-winning producers and multi-platinum producers. And, I've been able to accomplish a lot in my journey. Do I wish that, the ideology came into fruition, not knowing what I know now? But do I feel incomplete in my musical journey? Hell yeah. I have so much more to give, and I know that music is always going to be part of my life, and I will continue to develop my musical dreams. It's just a matter of what it's going to look like. It's going to look a lot different than I thought it was.
So, the one thing that motivates and pulls us forward in life are those motivators, those people. Who's been a hero for you? Who's been your role model?
Oh, man, so many people. I think it depends on the context. I have this, I guess you could call him like a spiritual mentor that I've known since I was like 13, and he's been just an integral, person in my life when it comes to like when I'm going through crisis. He's seen me through a lot of crisis in my life and a lot of darkness, and he's helped kind of direct me on the right path, even if it's not always what I've wanted to hear. He's played an integral role in me, getting an adult education in university and getting my psychology degree. So, I mean, definitely him and both of my folks, we've been through a lot together, but we've all stood the test of time together, and we have a really good relationship, and they've taught me a lot. So, I mean, I would definitely start there. If you're talking more broadly, like who are the people I look up to kind of out in the world, I think it's people like Brene Brown. She, was very, very integral in sort of launching this public narrative of vulnerability and the importance of that, and, facing shame and sort of, in not so many words, doing shadow work. That's more Carl Jung's, method and approach, but in not so many words, that's sort of what she's sort of inspiring, I'd say, the world to do. And I think that the world is changing because of thought leaders like her and because of her work. So I do often think that if I met my musical hero, I'd be super, super stoked about it. But if I met her, I would probably have a fangirl moment.
So that you're naturally leading into my next question. If you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
I mean, Brene would definitely be a top pick. It's obviously hard to narrow down, always hard to narrow down on these questions because there's just so many different minds and thought leaders that I would want to meet of completely different, people that speak on completely different topics. She would definitely be one. I think it would be awesome to meet Gary Vee. He's inspired me a lot in sort of like the business aspect of my career. Yeah, I think those two people for sure would be. Maybe even Dr. Dre would be really cool to meet, or Eminem. Those were two really, really big musical heroes of mine, just from like a lyrical standpoint. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on. Like, I could literally list so many people.
Let's kind of cut to who you are. And, the one thing about being a musician is that it's about your voice and the way that you approach your craft and how you model that voice. What motivates you? What drives you to be an artist and to be who you are?
Oh man, that's so it's so unspeakable in some ways. Like what drives me to create music and write it's not easily put into words. It's just sort of this like deep soul impulse, that causes me to sort of gravitate towards that modality of creation. I mean, if you ask me what motivates me to be me, that's a broader question, because I'm not only an artist, I'm also a coach and a speaker and a mental health advocate and mentor. I suppose on the mental health side of things, what drives me is my own darkness. Like, there's this quote out there that I'm sure you've heard. It's, don't be pushed by your fears, be led by purpose, or whatever. And I'd love to say that I'm only led by purpose, but no, man, I'm a human being. I'm also pushed by my fears. I'm pushed by the fear of regret, namely. But beyond sort of like whether it's passion leading me or fear pushing me, I do really feel a lot of, let's say, intrinsic motivation to share my learnings of my own struggles so that it can help people not have to suffer sort of for as long as I feel like I have with my own challenges.
At this point in your life, what are you the proudest of? What have you done that you look back and say, yeah, that's it?
Definitely the fact that I've been on stage every year of my life for 26 years has been a proud thing to reflect on. I'm also very proud of getting my psychology degree. I'm almost all the way through. I can't claim that I have it yet, but having that education and returning to academia was one of the hardest things I've ever chosen to do. Like, it was just, talk about leveling up and facing your fears. I mean, every fear and every doubt that I could ever have about myself just, tidal waved into my life when I decided to do that. So that I'm very proud of. And I guess I'm proud of the person I've become. I think we can all take a lot of different roads in life, and I've certainly wandered down some pretty risky paths. And I'm grateful and I suppose proud that I was able to, turn it around and to get on the right path, and to get on a path where I'm more connected to my spirituality and self-acceptance and, connection with myself and others. So, yeah, another big question from you.
Well, let me kind of stamp down a little bit here. As somebody that's enjoyed the stage so much for so long, what was the first live show you ever saw where you thought, I want to get up there and do that?
What was the first live show? Gosh, I don't even know if I can remember, because I was so young, right? Like, I actually want to say that I don't think the motivation came from me seeing anyone do it and being like, I want to do that. It just kind of came from inside. Like, it was, it was kind of this thing where sometimes I would like force my family to sit down and watch me like sing Lion King songs or something. Like, I know there's videos circulating around the family tree of stuff like that. And I think like at one point my parents were just like, all right, this kid needs to, I think the evolution of making my family watch me perform was, we had this like deck in front of our house, and I used that as a stage. And there was like a couple of times where I would go around the entire neighborhood and hand out invitations for like some performance that I was putting on. and this is before I got into public performing. And I think at that point, my parents were like, all right, like, instead of using our front yard as a stage, like, let's get her on the stage. And that's kind of how my public performing and doing, like, professional productions and stuff came to be. But yeah, it wasn't because I saw anyone. It was just this thing that I kind of naturally started to do. And then they were like, all right, let's help you along with that and get you into something more serious, so that you're not just like asking the neighbors to pay 25 cents for your show, you know?
Which is a good idea. I would
Yeah.
that sounds awesome. So
yeah, Gary Vee would be proud, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I got a quarter. I'd come to you. So let's do this. At the end of the proverbial day, when you're done doing your thing, how do you look back and quantify a good day? How do you say that day worked?
Oh, man. This might be the hardest question of all. I think part of it is a decision, because it's really easy to look, like, at least for me, I have high expectations of myself, and I'm a high performer, and I demand a lot of myself, and it's actually quite easy for me to look back on my day and be like, I didn't do enough. In fact, I probably think that more often than not. And so sometimes it's about kind of deciding, like pulling out, even like, turning to the 5-minute journal type thing and jotting down, like, what were 3 good things that happened today? Or what were 3 things that I'm proud of today? Like, what, and kind of deciding to, like, let yourself feel good about that. Because not every day is the same, right? Like, an ideal day is like I, crushed a keynote and had some radio interviews after and coached some clients, and, it's like this high functioning sort of well-oiled machine. And some days it does look like that, but other days it looks like I'm working on the back end of my website, or I'm, booking podcasts, or I'm trying to recover because I'm exhausted. So I think you have to make your own decision around deciding. Yeah, I think you have to decide to feel good about your day. Oh, sorry, my watch. My watch thought that I was talking to her. Yeah, you have to decide what feels good and fun, successful day.
Absolutely. So everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, your clients, but ultimately you're the one that can control your life. You're living it. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I feel like there's 2 different ways to read that. There's the ultimate reality and then the relative reality. Like, ultimate reality is like I'm a speck of dust in, the grand scheme of like the galaxy and, the span of a life. In the grand scheme of things, I'm kind of nothing, right? And that's cool. That's a cool perspective. I'm cool with that. In the relative reality, I'm a person that's doing their best every single day. I'm a person that wants to help the world in the best way that I possibly can. And, I've decided to bet on my strengths in that realm. Like, okay, I think the best way I can help the world is through coaching and through music and through my, my book coming out and things like that. But ultimately, like, that's kind of it. I'm here to serve. I am here to serve. And yeah, I can get in the way of that, and my ego can get in the way of that. And, that's part of the learning, but I'm here to serve, and I'm here to grow spiritually myself as a student and as a teacher. So I guess that's who I think I am. I'm like an agent of light and a student of the universe, and I'm just doing my best.
I like it. So, Janey, if anybody out there wants to learn more about you, your music, anything, coaching, anything that you do, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, I mean, my website's a great place to start. It's just janeybrown.com, and that's spelled Janey Brown.com. Janey B World is my Instagram, and a lot of other social accounts are also at Janey B World, JANEYB World. So yeah, I mean, really Google me, check out my website, check out my Instagram, and I'd love to connect. Like, don't be afraid to DM me and reach out and start a conversation and ask some questions.
Wonderful. This has been great. Thank you for taking time out and opening up. Good luck with everything. Have a great new year.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your questions.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.